The LABR 15-team mixed league draft occurred on Tuesday night. I was in it, as well as my guest, Jenny Butler from FTN Fantasy. We break down that draft coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the good folks at Fantrax. I'm Jeff Erickson, and I'm here with Jenny Butler from FTN Fantasy. Jenny did the LABR draft, and it's about the exact opposite side of me in this draft, in a 15-team draft. Jenny, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. I'm happy to talk baseball anytime. Love talking drafts. Love breaking down those drafts. So off we go. We had a fun night on Tuesday night. You and I both doing the LABR draft. It's always like one of the first expert leagues out there. I did Scarf just 2 days prior to that, but for the most part, this is one that has always been on the calendar for a while.
Yeah, I was really excited to be invited this year. This is a great group. You know, I have a very strict limit on the number of fab leagues that I'm willing to do.
Okay.
But when Steve Gardner DM'd me and asked me to do it, I couldn't say no. I think maybe it was you that reached out to me about doing Tout Wars, and I just can't travel for another draft, really.
Right.
So the ability to do this online, and this is a really good group, you know, Bloomfield and you and Fred Zinke, and to be a chance to be in a trading league with the Fred Zinke. I mean, how can you turn that down?
Exactly right. And Fred and I live streamed the first 2 hours on Tuesday night, and that was a lot of fun. Ryan Bloomfield, who won the league, streamed it as well. Paul Spohr, I think, did some stuff late into the draft on his. And of course, there's the Sirius XM broadcast too. So just lots of places you can go get that on demand on the Sirius XM app, by the way, too, if you want. So lots of places to get insights onto this one here. We're going to talk about that draft first. Got some news though, some bad news in the in the Mets world. Kodai Senga has a shoulder issue, and he's going to be out for quite a while, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, Mets are going to Mets, right? Like that's just they're just so snake bitten.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you draft early, you're going to have these things come up in spring. And it's just kind of luck of the draw. I mean, you can do your best to avoid injuries to a point, but it's just gonna hit certain people, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's the risk that you take when you are doing earlier drafts.
Absolutely. And this happens all the time where, because of the timing of this draft, it's always right around the start of spring training, maybe like a week in, you see stuff like this, you know, pitchers throwing for the first time, all of a sudden, oh, they're not throwing. Oh no, what's going on here? I remember like 4 years ago, I was like, okay, Emilio Pagan's got a chance to get some saves for the Rays. I'll take him. Nope. Gets traded to the Padres. JT Realmuto hurt his hand that year, like the day after I drafted him too. There's a happy ending. I think I did well that year. I think that was the year I won. So you can overcome that sort of stuff, but you can easily feel snake bitten by that too. With Senga, I mean, this is bad. It's a posterior capsule strain. It's a moderate posterior capsule strain in his right shoulder. You know, we saw Brandon Woodruff. He had a similar injury that basically ended last season, and it's going to keep him out of all of this year.
That's crazy. Shoulder injuries are scary in general. And, you know, hopefully you drafted him in a fab league and not a draft and a hold.
Right. Exactly. So Senga in our draft went to Scott Pianowski at pick, I think it was 5'11", if I recall. Yeah, 5'11".
I was just looking for him.
Yep. And his ADP from the start of in the NFBC, the start of February is 72. So it's right there on value at par, basically, is where he went. I wonder, does this accelerate the Mets in their attempts to try to maybe trade Pete Alonso?
Potentially, but I think at the same time, when you are in New York, there's only so much tanking that you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a huge payroll still. They have an owner that's willing to spend. If anything, I would say if they can start out reasonably well, they might be more likely to try and replace Senga than to get rid of Alonso. But it really depends on how the season starts.
I think that's a good point. And there are pitchers out there. Blake Snell's out there. Jordan Montgomery is out there. still too. I mean, so you could go out and get both of them even. I mean, the Mets, let's face it. I mean, they have a team full of fourth starters. Anyhow, Senga was the only guy that was better than that. I was reading Joe Sheehan's column on that, and he was making that point. Current over-under win totals haven't really changed yet a whole lot. I see them still at 82.5, 81.5 in a lot of places. I think a lot of books are probably waiting to see what sort of reaction the Mets make. It is juiced to the under in those cases for what it's worth, but still, they already kind of said that it's 2025 and beyond is where they're really looking at that window when they made those trades with Scherzer and Verlander last year, but they're not tear down to the studs method either.
Yeah, I just don't think you can do that in New York. The fans just won't have it. So yeah, I mean they're almost lucky that there's still a Snell and a Montgomery and those kind of guys out there. They could, do a reasonable job of replacing him. I mean, to be honest, replacing Senga with Snell is like practically a 1-for-1. You get the strikeouts and the walks. It's an archetype.
Yeah. The problem for that though is that it's just replacing him. And that doesn't get you anywhere closer to getting to the Braves and the Phillies. The Braves have 101, their own over under of 101.5. So, I mean, obviously the market thinks that they're going to go win this division going away. The Phillies are at 90, essentially 89.5, 90.5 is what I'm seeing here in a couple places. So, but and then there's on the other end of the spectrum is the Nats down in the 60s still.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see if they try to make it work, because I think they have to. I think they have to at least give it a go.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's one of those where they'll at least maybe they'll see what happens at the start of the season and kind of go that way. Alonso's a free agent at the end of the year. That's why they might look elsewhere eventually there. That's the big news item of this week. We saw Kyle Bradish last week, and we saw him drop quite a bit in our draft. I'm not surprised at that, but at the same time, it is a DL league, so you could theoretically still draft him and stash him. I'm not a big fan of that. He went in the 23rd round. I didn't take any of those stash guys. I was kind of like
that.
Yeah, and maybe I missed a beat on that one there, but other injuries are going to happen, and I just kind of wanted to start off with 30 relatively healthy guys. Noelvi Marte might not be ready for the start of the season. We'll see.
I think I got a little stash happy. I was so excited to be in this league with unlimited IL that I was like, yes, give me the Scherzer, give me the Jeffrey Springs, give me the Jeff Means, and I just got all this unlimited IL space. And when I first heard about the rules of the league, I knew it was unlimited IL. What I didn't know until I think the morning of was that you cannot pick up injured players in season. Right. So there isn't a waiting a month or two and then picking up Scherzer and stashing him on your IL. So it's now or never.
Sure.
So that's why I kind of went for it. And also because we're drafting in late February, we have, 6 weeks till the season starts. I thought that there will probably be some really good fab targets available in that first week. So having players that, instead of having to drop guys that I have drafted and that I liked, and the season hasn't even started, I can just stash those guys on the IL, and I have these free roster spots to replace with fab players.
Yeah, and that works. And Ryan Bloomfield drafted Royce Lewis last year and stashed him.
Yeah,
and that worked out pretty well. So maybe that's something I'm missing. Maybe that's something I need to be a little bit more aggressive with. Because
I'm a rookie, so who knows? I mean, I think I may have gone a little too far with it, though.
Yeah. Well, we will have a fab period before the season starts, so you'll be able to pick up 3 pitchers. So that could work. You never know. It might be a pretty sneaky play. And the thing is, it's not just injured people. You can't pick up anybody that's been sent down either. So we draft so early, nobody's really been sent down yet. So all bets are on for like Jackson Holiday and things of that nature. There, you can go ahead and take a chance that he makes the opening day roster, but you can't pick him up if he gets sent down. Like if he gets sent down and he was undrafted, you can't pick him up. So it makes sense to take a few extra stabs there too, I suppose.
Yeah, I noticed that you took Skeens. So what's your plan if if he isn't with the team on opening day? Are you going to drop him? Are you going to try and hold on?
I'm going to hold on. It's unlike the NFBC where it's unlimited. I mean, there's no IL, so every reserve spot is like sacred. I feel like I can carry a stash if that's the case. And I think Skeens is going to be up after like a month.
Yeah. I mean, it might be very quick.
Yeah. I think the comparison has been made multiple times to Strasburg, and I'm going to kind of go with that there.
Let's hope his career doesn't take the path of Strasburg.
Well, I'll take the first half of his career.
Yeah. The beginning was fine. Just not the end.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Our podcasts are sponsored by the good folks at Fantrax. We're going to do a little business here real quick. Fantrax, they are the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today and be entered to win an official MLB signed jersey from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Just simply go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/RotoWire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Also, we are on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right. Thank you for your indulgence there. We are done with ads for the rest of this podcast. I am Jeff Erickson. I'm here with Jenny Butler. We did the LABR 15 team mixed league draft. Jenny, you drafted 14th, and I saw a tweet earlier that you were quite unhappy with your draft position.
Yeah. So I didn't have the 14th KDS pick. I did end up going, I think at the time that I was choosing, I had my choice of maybe 12, 13, 14, something like that. And I did go a little bit closer to the end just to get a slightly better pick in the second round.
Okay.
And I just also kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit. Everybody was going so chalk with the KDS. I thought like, let's just go something a little bit off and try it. But yeah, I don't in general love drafting on the ends. It's hard, and I think it'll come up a couple times when we'll talk about decisions that I made that you don't know. There's so many picks between your two picks that you don't know what's going to happen. So you have to sort of plan for runs that may not end up happening. So, you know, I took two closers in 3 and 4 and thinking that I don't know who's going to come back to me. So I'm just going to do it. And I probably didn't need to, but, I'm happy with who I got. And, I was able to do sort of 2 picks at a time, which can be nice, to address 2 needs in one shot. And, I just had Paul Sporer on the end, and he was really the only one that I had to worry about, what I thought he was going to do.
Right. So you double tapped closers and he double tapped closers at the 3-4 turn. This is a maneuver I first saw done by our good friend and colleague DVR, Derek Van Riper. I think he coined the term double tap closers, at least the first time I heard it, like in an NFBC style of draft, and he did it at the 3-4 turn. So he did it right then and there. So it was interesting. You went with Diaz and Duran. He went with Hader and Clase. Devin Williams went 2 picks before you. Did you feel like coming into this draft, like that was one of your plans? If things fell a certain way, or how did this come about?
It wasn't a plan, but it was an option. So I didn't know, without having experience in this league, I can look back at previous draft boards, but I didn't really have a good feel for how closers were going to go. I come from an NFBC background where closers are always pushed up. I maybe should have considered that this isn't that league. So maybe I didn't really need to do this, but I thought it was an option. So when I saw Devin Williams go 2 picks before me, I thought, oh, it's starting. And then I also saw, Pablo Lopez and Freddie Peralta, 2 picks that I like, go before me. And at that point, I was looking at the starting pitching options, Logan Webb, Aaron Nola, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Gallen. Like, I didn't love any of them. I liked them, but I didn't love them. Mm-hmm. And so I just decided to get closers out of the way. I'm, in general, an early closer drafter. I think that the slightly different rules in this even led me in that direction a little bit more. In NFBC leagues, you have a 7-man bench and you have $1,000 in fab. And in this league, you have $100 in fab with no $0 bids, and you have 6 player bench. So I thought to myself, I really don't want to be stashing closers. I don't want to be speculating on closers in fab or on my bench. I don't want to carry a closer speculation on my bench. I don't want to be putting out $2, $3, $10 at a time. I really don't want there to be, a closer position that opens up and I'm spending $20 of my $100 fab on a closer speculation, because sometimes we don't pick the right guy. And when you spend 20% of your fab budget and you didn't get the right guy, that is crushing. So I really didn't want to do that. I also like having closures one place where I don't really like waiting till the end of a tier. I like to choose the guys that I'm going to get out of the tier. So I like to get guys that are going to give me good strikeouts and good ratios. So I think that, when you take one of the top 5, 8 closers, you are have a much better chance of having somebody that's not going to hurt you as much in those categories. And really, when I took Duran as my second closer, that's the 5th closer off the board already. So I was worried that, I didn't know what was going to come back to me.
Right. And, I was sitting at the other end of like, okay, well, let's see what the rest of this round brings. And I thought that we'd see like 5 or 6 more go, maybe perhaps. And instead, 1 went before me. And that was right immediately next to me, Camilo Duvall. Now, in fairness, I wanted to wait. I was choosing to wait. And it worked out that I still got my guy Seawald when I did. I like where your mindset is with that. And the fab issue is real and powerful because it's, you're going to need that fab for other things too. And so going dribbles and drabs, and if you go $3 or $4 on a closer spec as opposed to just 1, that it adds up after a while. There are trades in this league, but you can't trade fab. So you would think that it'd be easier to trade a closer. It's not that easy to trade a closer either. It is a trade league. Fred Zinke exists. Therefore, trades will happen. I often make it with him. I trade with Piano all the time too. Scott Pianowski. I'll trade with lots of people. I made a pretty big trade with Steve Gardner a couple of years ago. I think last year, I made one with him as well. He's not in the league this year, but he's managing it for us still. He's taking a slight step back to kind of lessen his load a little bit there. So I'm happy to see that. But I totally get where you're coming from. I'm really surprised that the rest of the league didn't react. Although I will say it's a standalone league. So I think maybe after the top 5 are gone, maybe people thought, I don't want to spend a 4th round pick on that.
Yeah, I did hear that from, it caused sort of a ruckus on various streams that Paul, I didn't know Paul Scorer was going to do it too. So I think it looked extra extreme that the 2 of us both did it. But, I did hear the comment that, it's not an overall league, and it's not something that I do with any consideration towards an overall. I just want to have my saves, not worry about it. In probably almost all the leagues that I will draft this year, I hope that I don't even have to think about the closer speculation market. I can go. Last year, I did it pretty well that I didn't even really have to think about relievers in any of my fab leagues. And it's a really nice thing to have.
Absolutely. I like being able to eliminate something from fab. For me, I prefer to eliminate starters. I like to avoid streaming if possible. My better teams, like in the NFBC main event, have been when I don't have to hit too many streaming starting pitchers. A couple of years ago, a team that finished in the money, not overall, but in my league at least, I didn't pick up a starting pitcher for almost 2 months. My God, that was so fun. That was so nice.
Crazy.
That I can just put this one in here and put this one here. And that not only does it's the peace of mind, but also prevents you from making some bad decisions. And just as importantly, it just focuses your fab. Now I can screw up fabbing on other things too, just as easily. But I think a little bit of focus, a little pre-planning is nice.
Yeah, I try to do that also. I try to have at least the beginning of the year, my bench be primarily pitching, and try to see who works out. I'm much more comfortable streaming hitters. And one rule that changed in this league this year from previous years is that we will be able to switch out our hitters spots on Fridays.
Yep.
So we'll have two times a week hitter lineups. And so I think that, I can't go crazy with the streaming because of the $100 in fab, but I'm much more likely to stream hitting than I will be to stream pitching if at all possible.
Right. I heard Phil Dussault when he was on the RotoWire podcast with James Anderson talking about doing something similar, where he likes in a 7-man bench situation, he likes to have like 5 starters on his bench. And I agree with that approach. I've done it before. It works out well. You start that way. You don't finish the season necessarily that way, but it's nice there that, you're getting some of the starting pitching early, and hopefully a couple of them stick to the point where you want to keep them all the time. And then you can pick up position players as needed down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. In a perfect world, you start out, you have some guys that work, some guys that don't. And early on, you can replace them with those emerging starters that you can really stick to all year. And, what you had a couple years ago is the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. So you started off Ohtani and Harper, then 2 closers, then 2 starters, and Bobby Miller and Joe Ryan. Fun start. Very fun upside type of start. You get Ohtani full-time as a DH, and he might even hit more often because he doesn't have to worry about pitching this year.
Yeah, he might hit more often. I heard somebody mention I guess it was Steve Gardner on the Sirius feed. I apparently am able to put him in to a pitching spot if it gets to be maybe the last week of the season and I don't want my ratios to be ruined, which is an interesting development. I wouldn't have even thought of that, but I guess I could, if I wanted to, put him in as a pitcher during some point in time. One thing that honestly threw me off, we might end up getting to it later, is that Bryce Harper appears on the draft board. All these players have those colored stickers that are color-coded for position. He appears on the draft board as a utility player. So it looks like I took 2 utility players to start the draft. And the worst part really, though, was that I needed him to be colored as a first baseman because I forgot in about round 13 that he was a first. He's just in my head as an outfielder. It's just an instinctual, reaction that he's an outfielder. And so I'm looking in round 13 and think, I don't have a first baseman. I need to get a first baseman. And so, in that round, you took Encarnacion Strand, Nathaniel Lowe went, Vinny Pasquantino went, and I thought, oh no, this is really getting away from me. And so I jumped Isaac Paredes, which, I like him. I'm not opposed to having him as my corner infielder.
Right.
But I would not have done that if I didn't just make a panic pick. And so I clogged up my corner infield spot. I have Ohtani clogging up my utility spot. And there were some first base values and third base values really that were open in rounds, 19, 20 that I had no option to take. I'm not going to take Josh Bell or Anthony Rizzo just to be a bench player. So, I got myself stuck and I was really mad at myself for doing that. And I thought, man, if that little sticker was orange instead of gray, I think I probably would have avoided that mistake. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's funny how the mind works that way. So when you're sitting at the draft table, this is an online draft. Are you like a pen and paper type of person? Are you a draft software? What do you do to track your team?
I have my own spreadsheet that I make.
Okay.
So I, have a player list and I import, I calculate my own auction values and import from a bunch of different sources. And so I have values there. I have ADP and I have the auction value, and I am crossing off players as I go. So I have it set up that where when a player gets drafted, I copy his name out of the player list and into a separate list. And that is conditionally formatted so that it grays out the row that he's in. So it's, a visual cross off kind of thing. So I would like to maybe have a slightly different option because you end up a lot of the time spending a lot of time crossing people off. Yeah. And if you are not on top of it, you can really get behind. And if you lose track of it and you have to abandon that, it really throws me off. So I do it and I like the way it works for the most part, but it does take up a lot of time in a 1-minute draft, just keeping up with crossing off players. At least with a spreadsheet, I can, control F and find somebody compared to
Right.
like having a piece of paper. But
Right.
it's not as convenient maybe as a draft software. Although sometimes I see people with draft software, you get one pick off and you're behind, and then
Oh,
you have to go back and catch up and like
yep.
get people on the right. Sometimes you're trying to get everybody onto the right teams, and that seems also like it can be a headache.
Especially if you're in an auction. That's
Yeah.
where it's a real problem. I'll say, well, snake draft too, because an auction, you just change the person's team. Whereas a snake draft, you have to worry about ordering. So yeah, they're both. And if you get like 7 picks off, which happened to me once in this draft, frustrating. Good news was
You were streaming. I can't imagine trying to do that at the same time.
Yeah, well, I actually had my one bonk after we were done streaming. Actually, I timed out on one pick because I hit the wrong button and I was like frantic trying to get back to the right page. So, I mean, I had a player in my queue that got taken, so it was fine. And actually, the guy I was gonna take later still made it back to me, which tells me it's probably a bad pick. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I use draft software. I use the RotoWire draft software. I love it. It's been good to me. It helps that I know it like the back of my hand too. So
yeah, I have used it. It is really good.
Oh, thank you. Let's keep looking at your draft. So you start off with Ohtani, Harper, Diaz, Duran, Bobby Miller, Joe Ryan as your first 2 starting pitchers. Targets. Were you happy with the choices you had at that 5-6 turn?
I was happy with it. They are not guys that I've drafted a lot, but not because I didn't want them. It just sort of, sometimes how drafts work out, you just don't end up with them. But I kind of went, it felt like fun picks. I kind of wanted to go with some fun picks. And, I felt good, especially after taking the 2 closers in rounds 3 and 4. I think I'm basically looking at, Diaz and Duran with Bobby Miller and Joe Ryan versus maybe, a Logan Webb, Aaron Nola combined with, a Jose Iglesias, Paul Sewald combo. I think I ended up okay there. I was kicking myself a little bit when the closers didn't go, but I'm happy with who fell to me. And I those are 2 guys that I do want to have some shares of this year. So I'm happy to get them here.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I worry about with Miller a little bit is like how many innings does he throw? Because the
Yes.
Dodgers could go 6-man rotation.
Yeah, 6-man rotations are always great in theory, don't always really happen.
True.
There's always injuries and things don't work out that way. But I think I worry a little bit less about innings than some other people do. I mean, there's the glass now innings concern, and then there's the young player innings concern.
Right.
And with young players, I don't worry about it as much. We sort of have this, idea in our heads that they can only go X number of innings over the year before. And where does that number come from? I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard, Saris once say that he's talked to people and nobody really knows where that number came from.
Right.
And so, I think if the need is there, the Dodgers may not have the need, but if the need is there, I don't think they'll hesitate to just use them every 5 days, even every 6 days. And I'll be fine with that.
All right. Very good. Let's keep rolling then. Another pick that was touted in our live stream, and I think maybe even in Ryan's, I remember, if I recall correctly, because I watched that the day after. But Cole Ragans, you got him at pick 9.14. Kind of slipped a little bit there. I've seen him go earlier in a lot of other drafts.
Yeah, I was really surprised that happened. But he sort of fell right in my lap. And so I thought, why not? I mean, it's again, a little sort of a fun, sexy pick. And I just wanted to, get a share while I could. I do take this league very seriously, and I do, want to do well. And if it's a very public facing league, but as compared to some of the leagues that I'm going to be drafting in Las Vegas in March, it is not for a lot of money. So I felt like, this is the time to get players that I really want because I really want to root for them, rather than sort of taking like the smart, safe pick all the time.
Sure. Ragans, though, I mean, in the NFBC, he's going to pick 105 in the last month, and you got him a lot later there.
Yeah, I was really surprised that he was there.
Yeah. Actually, is that a lot later? Yeah, it's one pick 134 is where you got him at. So yeah,
I was
that is a
told that
lot
there
later.
would be no math.
Yeah. You saw like the little tiny hamster wheel spinning in my head there as I was trying to add up the numbers there. So, yeah, it's, the thing is, I understand why people are a little wary. I mean, he was hurt a lot at Texas. It just, and, it felt like it kind of came out of nowhere when he did join the Royals and went off like that. But at the same time, I mean, there's some signature significance in what he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good ballpark. It's not a, team that's going to get a huge number of wins, but I think that they'll get more than maybe what people are expecting. So I'm really just counting on Kansas City not to screw up whatever Tread Athletics taught him. Hopefully he went there again this summer. Or this winter. I don't really know if he did, but just keep doing what you're doing, Cole. Please don't, just stay the same and then we'll be good.
Exactly right. So I do like that pick. I haven't gotten any exposure to Ragans so far this year, but I suspect I will at some point in time. Chris Sale joined your team after getting traded to the Braves. Yeah, this is another one of those how many innings does he throw type of guys. But for obvious reasons, he's been hurt a lot so far. And what are we getting with Chris Sale? Both valid questions, but I think with the organization, with the team, with his track record, I think that's a reasonable risk.
Yeah, he was another one that I was actually fairly surprised fell to me. I know that he's kind of a popular pick, amongst people that want to talk about, their guys and things like that. And I just, whenever I can, like to get pitchers on good teams and teams that I trust their pitching development. So, it's like somebody getting traded to Tampa Bay,
right.
If Atlanta wants him, I feel good about it. So, and, they should get a lot of wins. Hopefully they will let him pitch long enough into the games to be a part of those wins.
Kind of like me drafting Ryan Pepio. In Rays, we trust for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You took 2 catchers and a third guy that ultimately will be a catcher. You got Luis Campusano. I believe that was in the 14th round, 15th, 14th round on the
14th.
way back. And then Henry Davis, who will catch at some point. He's currently only outfield eligible. And of course, you had to add in one guy in the last round. You did Gary Sanchez for that. An interesting gambit with Davis. We know he's not catcher eligible now, but he's going to be the Pirates' full-time catcher, especially given the injury situation there.
Yeah, the catcher situation got away from me, to be honest. I was watching them go and I thought, let's see, round 12, when it was coming towards me, I was all about taking Gabriel Moreno and he went a couple picks before me. And then on the way, I thought, well, if I didn't get him, I probably can get, Mitch Garver, Keibert Ruiz, maybe on the way back. And they went in that same round. So it's one of those things where you're on the ends and the end of a tier goes and you just kind of push it back. And then the end of the next tier goes and you push it back. So I got Campusano, who I think is the last guy maybe that I really am happy to get ish ? But, I thought, well, I really need to think about what I'm going to do with this position now. So when Davis was available in the next round, I thought, well, at least, if he can get that eligibility pretty soon, that could be a way to get a second catcher that I like when pretty much everyone I like is gone.
Right.
So once I had Davis, I just decided to wait until the last round to take the fill-in player. And I didn't want to get a nothing player because, it could be a little while until Davis gets that eligibility. They brought in Grandal, right? I think so.
Right.
You never know. It might be a little bit longer than we think, but I think he's good enough to be an outfielder, to be a starting outfielder in a fantasy league. So I'm not upset if I need to start him in the outfield for a while. Gary Sanchez, who knows? They brought him in and they paid him. So, he might be getting some DH at bats, maybe periodic catcher at bats when they need to rest Contreras. So I just wanted to get somebody that might be kind of fun and we'll see where it goes. If Sanchez doesn't work out, I might have to stream a little bit and hopefully Davis won't take too long getting that eligibility.
Yeah. And hopefully he hits, he does, but, because now he's got the pressure, the responsibility of playing catcher. I mean, there's a reason why they moved him to the outfield in the first place there, so he could focus on the hitting. Now that he's not focusing strictly on the hitting, can he still hit? That's the thing that I'm kind of curious about. I mean, I think there's plenty of upside there, and I think at that your price for him is fine as far as that goes. In terms of like weighing risk versus upside, there is there a player that got away from you? Beside, I guess you already mentioned that a little bit with catchers. Is there another area where like even like did Spore snipe you at all?
Sporer did snipe me. He sniped me on Christopher Sanchez.
Ooh, good one.
And I took Cole Ragans when he came to me, but I would have been very happy to get Sonny Gray. I was definitely thinking about Wilson Contreras at that same turn. He took Ty France, who I really like, but like I said, I blocked myself up at first base. And he also took Alex Cobb as his injury stash, which I think is a pretty smart one. But yeah, I got a couple of angry DMs from him during the draft that I sniped him, which was always fun.
Yep. He dropped by ours and said that Jenny's killing me, I think is what he was saying. So yeah,
whenever you can frustrate Paul Sporer, you got to do it.
Yeah. And apparently all you need to do is just say Cardinal, take a Cardinal. Paul Sporer took 6 Cardinals, like in 7 picks. It was crazy.
I didn't even notice it until somebody as the draft was going on, I was listening to the Sirius XM feed, and as when somebody said it, I had to look back and say, "Oh my gosh, he is! What is this?" As a Reds fan, like I'm anti-Cardinal, so.
That's right. But not their players. I did take one in Paul Goldschmidt. And did I take any other Cardinals? I think that's the only one I took. How could I have? Paul took the rest of them. So
no, they didn't leave any for the rest of us.
Impossible to take any. But yeah, he went Arenado, Walker, Gray, Wilson Contreras, Edman, and Nootbaars all in pretty short order. I'd love Sonny Gray this year. I think that's a great landing spot for him. I was slightly disappointed when Paul took him. I was at a point where I was taking hitters. So I mean, kind of, I'm happy with who I got, but just because you're happy with your gut doesn't mean you have enough. With pitchers, you always need that other one. So I was a little disappointed I didn't get a bite of Sonny Gray on this league, but so it goes.
Yeah. Like that was when I took Cole Ragans, and I didn't expect Ragans to be there. I was eyeballing Sonny Gray the whole time. And when Ragans fell, I thought, should I do this? Should I? And then I thought, I could take both. And then you have that thought of like, what would Paul Sporer be more likely to take if I do want to get both? And I thought since, Ragans is, the name that everyone is on the tip of everyone's tongue this offseason, that I should take him and not give Paul a chance.
Yeah, it turned out well there. You took a lot of outfielders later. You took Ian Happ.
We both did, right?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Was that a design? Like, okay, I think because always something has to give in a draft. You kind of come in planning like, okay, well, I'm going to wait a little bit on outfield and fill up other positions, or is it just more what the draft provided to you?
It was a little bit more of the latter. I'm not scared of outfield. I've heard a lot of talk in this offseason about outfield being so shallow. It's not something that I've found necessarily. It's not ideal. Obviously, the late guys aren't as good as the early guys. You could say that about pretty much every position. So, but I think that in a 30-round draft, there are plenty of usable options in the 20s rounds. I took Ian Happ in round 10, which I was really happy to get. He's a nice combination of power and speed. And then I waited, jumped on Henry Davis specifically because of the potential catcher eligibility. But then, I was happy to get in 16, 17, I got Kerry Carpenter and Max Kepler. Max Kepler, I think, is going later than he probably should. And then in round 21, I took Matt Wallner, who hopefully will be a good power source. So I think that late in drafts, there are outfielders there that are definitely usable, if not desirable. So I'm not scared to wait a little bit on outfield.
Nor am I, obviously, and didn't necessarily come in thinking, okay, I'm going to wait on outfield. It just kind of worked out that way. I did get Santander in the 8th. He's like super old, super boring, and that's fine. I need a few boring players in my life. Yoshida, same thing, except he addresses batting average, and I definitely wanted to attack that. Hayes is another one. Merrifield doesn't have a green sticker, but he's going to be an outfielder for me too. That was like I was kind of shopping in the boring tier because I just wanted playing time. I wanted to make sure if I'm going to wait on outfielders, I want to wait on guys that I know are at least they're going to play on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's the key. And you got Jack Swinsky. I am a huge Jack Swinsky fan, so I'm
Yeah.
happy about that one. You know how sometimes you find a guy when he's just first breaking out, and then you feel this sort of like kinship ownership over
Yes.
of like him being good and everybody else finding him. It was in late 2021, I think, 2022 maybe, that I jumped on him when I first saw him doing stuff in maybe the second half of the season. And now that he's, on everybody's teams, I'm just so proud,
Aw, aw. Yeah, I am definitely, after it was cool to like him, that I jumped in. I've got him in a bunch of drafts though this year. Got him in a draft Champions League, the Arizona Fall League Speakers draft that we did, and another NFBC 50 I did early on. It seems like I end up with him. That's like the neighborhood I'm shopping for an outfielder.
Yeah, me too. I've gotten him on several teams.
Do you try to diversify, or do you keep going for the same guys? And I feel like this, you got a better chance of repeating mid to late rounds than you do early. But do you find yourself going back to the well with the same players?
I tend towards certain guys, but I am not somebody, despite what I just said about Jack Swinsky, I'm not somebody who really has my guys. I'm not the type of drafter who eliminates, 80% of the player pool like the great Casey Chaw used to.
Right.
And so I'm just sort of looking at each draft as it comes and trying to balance my stats. So, there may be teams where, I might not go as extreme as, a keeper or Estrella Ruiz, but, there may be a time when I really feel like I need to take, a Tommy Edman or Nico Horner, somebody like that. But I'd rather not have to do that. I'd rather stay balanced, but I'm open to taking what the draft gives me. Things are going to fall. Things are going to go early. There might be times when all of a sudden I'm just overloaded with power and I need to make that up. So I don't really want to limit my options if I can help it.
Right. That makes sense. Every 15 team league, it seems like there's an area, whether it's a position or a category, where you feel a little shaky. For me, it's the closers. My second closer is Alex Lang. I did not get that second closer. I probably should have taken Alvarado instead of Lang, although I think Lang's got a better beat on his job than Alvarado does on his, even though Alvarado is a better pitcher.
Right.
But where for you is there like that uncertainty, that shakiness?
I think it's in the back half of my starting pitching. Like I said, I think I might have gone a little bit stash crazy, IL crazy. So right now I'm looking at having, my starting lineup, and that's it. I'm going to have to build up the depth from that first fab run.
Okay.
What I did, I have Chris Paddock, who's a complete wild card. It was another like sort of fun guy pick, but that's not somebody who I feel like I can rely on. One thing I really liked about it is in the round 23-24 turn, I paired up Tyler Wells and John Means. So hopefully that's kind of a switch out. If I don't know if Wells might even still stay in, if Bradish is out, but it's possible that when Means is ready to go, Wells will lose his job and I can just make that swap. But I think that I need to be really thoughtful in the first couple of fab runs to make sure that I can build up some starting pitcher depth.
Sure, absolutely. And notice I have a bunch of starting pitchers on my reserves. We have a little bit of a challenge. You went with Paddock. I went with Louis Varlin.
Yeah.
I watch the answer be Desclafani and someone else, but
probably.
Yeah, we'll see. But the Twins, I mean, I think they have a pretty decent recent track record. So with starting pitchers, so maybe both are the correct answer. So we'll see about that one there. But it's always fun to kind of breaking down the draft, seeing what we're going to do. Let's talk a little Reds real quick before we get out of here. I was asked this the other day. I did a segment on VSiN, and they were asking me about the Reds win total. I think I saw it's 82.5, 83.5 in some places. And I'm not sure where I fall on that one there. Apparently, though, according to BetMGM's guy, it is the most bet future so far. The Reds over on 82.5.
That's crazy. I'm surprised. I mean, I guess it's just because they're so young and fun. But, a lot of things have to go right for them to really make a run at it this year. I think we're probably still at least another year away from, having a real contender.
Right.
There's a lot of talk in the fantasy community about this infield, and there's so many guys, and what are we going to do? Are they all going to lose playing time? And I'm not really that worried about it. I feel like it'll all kind of work itself out. I think it's a lot to assume that every one of these, rookie or second year guys are going to just be firing on all cylinders through the entire season.
Right.
It's a lot more likely that there's going to be ebbs and flows up and down. These guys might have to go down for a little while. There will obviously be injuries. And, one person that's definitely getting, the short end of the stick in the conversation is poor Jonathan India, who, I have said from my, the one thing I can sort of contribute to this conversation as a Reds fan is that I don't see Jonathan India being a strictly bench player, a super utility player. I mean, he might play all over the place, but I think he's going to play regularly. When you are in Cincinnati and you are going to those games, the fans love Jonathan India. I think the team loves Jonathan India. And I think that there will be times with the way that the younger guys are going that I think he'll get plenty of at-bats.
Yeah, I think he will too. And I think everybody's like frustrated that Candelario signed with the Reds, even though I'm happy the Reds are signing people. But I think you're probably right. India is cheap. He still is tradable if they want to trade him, but I don't think they want to trade him either. I think we always say good teams have depth, right? Well, just because that depth gets in the way of our plans. And I'm the guy that has both Marte and Encarnacion Strand. So I'm the one that's shaking my fist right now. But I actually think there's a way that the talent works out. Now, I think Spencer Steer loses a little bit of time. I think India does lose an at-bat or two here and there. We'll see. I mean, McLain's got the oblique issue right now. Elly is trying to build himself back up. Marte's got his own hamstring issue. He's going to make his debut on March 2nd, I guess. But it just illustrates that, there are potential pratfalls for a lot of these different players.
Yeah, these things always have a way of working themselves out. I mean, how many times have we said at the beginning of the season, the Dodgers have all this pitching depth. What are they going to do? Who's going to play? Mm-hmm. And, by May or June, they're starting some guy we've never heard of. And of course he's doing well because they're the Dodgers, but it always ends up, you need that. If you're going to be a team that's trying to contend, you need all the depth you can get.
Absolutely. The Reds have more pitching depth than they did last year. Of course, they had none last year, none at all. And they added Jake Moll. That's the list of all the players they could have added at the trade deadline. They added Jake Moll, who pitched well, but a lefty specialist isn't really going to push you over the top. They need a lot more than that. What'd you think about the signings that the Reds made this year? Are you on Frankie Montas at all? Are you on Nick Martinez at all?
I'm a little wary of them for fantasy. Okay. I think that, in something like a draft and hold where you have 25 pitchers to choose from, you can get by with that. It's maybe worth taking a shot at the upside. Mm-hmm. But, for the Reds, I'm happy about it. I think that, they went out and got some guys that may not be the most expensive, the biggest names, but I think they're both very solid pitchers. And I'm hopeful that they can, survive in Great American.
Yeah, that's always the rub, right? It's like, okay, it's one thing to actually be fully healthy and firing on all cylinders, and it's another thing to be able to do it in that ballpark there too. It does tend to wear down some of these pitchers. Nick Lodolo, are you drafting him? Are you drafting Hunter Green at all anywhere so far this year?
I haven't. Hunter Green is a little wild for my taste in fantasy. Mm-hmm. I was definitely open to Lodolo, and I'm seeing weird predictions that he might start in the minors. I don't know that I believe that, mm-hmm. but they do have at the moment too many starters for a 5-man rotation. So, right. Maybe it'll be Ashcraft. Maybe, it will be Lodolo that starts out in the minors just to recover a little more from that injury. But I think Lodolo is a really good pitcher. And so if he's healthy, I don't see why he wouldn't have one of the 5 starting spots.
Right. And they're saying that he could throw live batting practice in his next throwing session in the case of Lodolo. So we'll see. I mean, it's just, you want him to be like, oh, I'm fully ready at the start of spring training after missing so much time last year, but it hasn't
It's surprising that he's not fully ready to me. Like it was a broken tibia, right? I think. So that feels like something that should be healed by now. So I don't know quite what to make of that.
Yeah. I'll tell you the one guy I'm sneakily excited about, and he's got no fantasy buzz. I don't think he'll be a fantasy pitcher, but as a Reds fan, I'm super excited that there's no restrictions on TJ Antone. I'm
Oh
happy to see him
yeah.
fully ready to go.
I love TJ. That's a good call. I totally forgot about him.
Yeah, and he could be. Remember, he was in the bullpen. He was kind of that hybrid guy, but he could be a 2 inning guy, and he could shorten
Oh
these
yeah.
games. That's the guy that I think could be a big changer for this team. I mean, Emilio Pagan. Okay, great. We signed another reliever who was actually quietly pretty good last year. Just don't let him close. But Antone, that's a changer for me.
They need the bullpen depth too. Like I remember hearing you say a couple times last year, they
Yeah,
were those guys out. They cannot
totally.
do that again and expect to have success in September.
I think they had the top 3 of the top 5 in terms of appearances in baseball last year. It's
It was
just
crazy. If you watch the games, it was just the same guys every day. And you're looking back at the game log. It's like he's pitched 4 straight days. Really? This is what we need to do right now?
yeah. And the thing is, it was a lack of options to trust, and also starters that would go 4 innings, 3 innings all the time. That'll hurt you. That'll add to those appearance levels. That's for sure. Uh, CES. I took him at 13-3. Did I take him too soon?
No, I think that's good. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world. It's just, like we were talking about, the crowded infield, the rookie ups and downs that can happen, but like
Mhm.
talent-wise, I mean, he's got it all.
Yeah. The playing time is the concern, but I feel like talent wills out.
Yeah.
And I mean, he demonstrated it at the big league level last year when he got called
Yeah.
up. That's the thing that gets me. So, but Candelario will play. I mean, David Bell reiterated that on media day just 2 days ago. So I get that there. So we'll see about that. But
They
uh,
they really did well with the trades that they made a couple
oh my
summers
gosh,
ago,
yes,
Castillo and Molly. I mean, everybody was pretty complimentary at the time. I knew some of the names a little bit, but I wasn't totally familiar, and they really have all turned out well.
yeah. I mean, the Castillo trade, everybody knew that Castillo was going to probably do well in Seattle, and he has, and I'm happy for him. I
Mhm.
hope he continues to do well. But everyone knew about Marte, and we are pretty excited about that. I was hoping Williamson would be a little bit better. We got him in the Jesse Winker trade, but he ate up innings last year. There's value in that. He did more than Winker did. So there, there is that. And then of course the Malley trade. I mean, that was the home run. We got Spencer Steer, and we got Encarnacion Strand in that deal. And then the third player we got in that deal, we actually traded to the Guardians, and that's how we got Benson.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually see I'm in Columbus, Ohio, blacked out, of course, of actually watching the Reds unless I
Oh,
want to do some sort of illegal feed. But I live 5 minutes away from the Guardians AAA stadium,
yes.
and I go to a lot of games. And so I've watched quite a bit of Will Benson, and I love him. He's great. Like he can do anything, and I wish that it was the situation was such that he could get regular playing time, because he, especially for fantasy, power, speed, he's just super fun to watch. Like I am a huge Will Benson fan.
Yeah, I am too. And yeah, that's it's like you look at the OPS, you're like, oh yeah, this is a great player for fantasy. Oh, and then you look at the RBI and the runs, you're like, oh, now I see why I can't roster him.
Yeah.
He's really good in sim games, really good there, but not in our format, unfortunately. The same thing is kind of true of Jake Fraley now. His value has been kind of chopped down because they have 3 left-handed hitting outfielders between Fraley and Benson and Friedel, and you got Spencer Steer and possibly now India in the outfield mix as well.
It's crazy. I mean, who would have thought a year or two ago that the Reds would just be overrun with options in both the infield and the outfield? And, Fraley can be a little bit fragile at times, and you never know if Friedel will keep up the pace that he set last year. But, having all of these options, it can only be a good thing for the Reds win total.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So going back to that win total, it's at 82 and a half, 83 and a half. What say you? 82 and a half, excuse me.
It's so hard to be objective in this situation.
I
My
know.
first instinct is to just immediately say over. It sounds, I would say, about right.
Hmm.
It's a very winnable division. So if they aren't trying the entire season to win, I'll be very disappointed. I think they are. I mean, I don't think it's, that's a worry, but it's a very winnable division. So especially with Milwaukee, giving up a little bit, we have sort of St. Louis taking a step back to where they were, with Milwaukee taking maybe a little bit of a step back, but I think they can hang with those guys. And I believe I've told you this before. When we go out to Las Vegas, the Westgate Sportsbook has the MLB over-under contest. And I try to tell everybody that's drafting an FBC to go over to the Westgate and join that contest. It's,
nice.
Yeah, it's I think $200, and they have a list of lines, and you just pick over under. And last year I finished second, if I might brag a little bit, out of 84 entries, $5,000.
Wow.
So yeah, it worked out really well. I didn't have the season that I would have liked in NFBC. I had a lot of fourth place finishes, which is not my two main events, and my $2,500 auction were all fourth place finishes. So it was not as profitable as I would have liked, even though it wasn't a bad season. But that contest really made up a lot of ground.
Yeah, it covered your costs at least. So that's nice. That's very nice. All right, well, very good. Do you have a favorite total that you like so far for this year?
I haven't looked so far this year, but like I mentioned earlier, I think Kansas City could be a surprise, not contender, maybe in that division, who knows? But I think that they're going to do a little bit better than people think. It's so hard when you look at lines to know what to do with the Dodgers and the Braves lines and teams like that. Like to be predicted for over 100 wins is kind of insane. So, the smart move, if you're making some kind of wager, is to find the places where you think the teams are going to go under, because it's the popular thing amongst the public to pick those over lines, because that's what everybody wants to do. Everybody goes out to Vegas and they, pick the over on their own team and, trying to have fun with it. And if you really want to do the smarter thing, is to find the teams that might be, a pick on the under.
Yeah. I have one fade. That's the Marlins at 78.5. I feel like they've done nothing to improve. They signed Tim Anderson.
Yeah. I drafted him. With no team. I don't generally like drafting players with no team, but I took a chance in round 19, and I was very happy to see that news today.
Yeah, well, I hope he's more the 2022 Anderson than the 2023 Anderson for your sake.
Yes. I didn't have him anywhere last year. I listened to poor Scott Genstad every Sunday.
Tim Anderson Homer watch. Yep.
Oh, it was awful. So, I'm not going to put up with it all that long. Last year, you get stuck with those guys that, you expect to be good, and you just think, I can't drop him. What am I going to do? I'm not going to drop him. Right. But, and then in the end of the season, you probably should have dropped him. But in this situation, and the fact that I got him late and he's had this bad year, if he's not hitting, then I don't have any problem cutting bait.
Yeah. I get it. I absolutely get it there for sure. And he's probably better than John Birdie. So it was worth and it didn't cost the Marlins anything really, but that's just the point. They lost Sandy Alcantara. They signed Trey Mancini, and they traded for Christian Bethancourt. That's it. That's all they did this offseason.
Yeah.
They lost Soler
too, right? They lost Soler.
Yeah. And so I feel like they should be like 75, 74. Down in that range, because I think they were overachieved a lot last year too. So, I guess 78.5 is a reflection of overachieving. I just think it should be even more, but that's just me. That's my one that I like so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that one.
All right. Very good. Well, let's end on in harmony then. We'll end up with agreeance, and we'll look forward to the start of more spring training games and more meaningful news. Jenny, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Always fun talking baseball. Follow Jenny Butler on Twitter, of course. You can follow her at Jenny Butler 830. You can also read her work over at FTN Fantasy, and she's part of their draft kit, and hopefully more during the regular season as well. And she'll be a part of this Labor League all season long. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Thanks to Fantrax for your sponsorship. We'll be back at you again tomorrow. We've got, of course, we got Clay and Todd tomorrow. Thanks for listening to RotoWire. Take care.